The billionaire fall in love with a black woman at his friend's wedding. At his best friend's wedding, billionaire Lucas expected champagne toasts and hollow smiles. Not the moment his guarded heart would collide with Marie's, a love he never saw coming but could no longer resist. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. The chandeliers glimmered like frozen constellations, scattering their light across polished marble floors and tuxedoed men with glasses of champagne. Lucas Bennet stood at the center of it all as he always did, surrounded, admired, yet utterly alone. He wore power like a tailored suit, custom-fitted and precise, but beneath it lay a silence he couldn't name. "Lucas, my man," a voice called from behind him. He turned to greet another guest, offering his perfectly practiced smile. His best friend's wedding was the event of the season, and Lucas's presence was both expected and required. He was the billionaire everyone wanted to photograph, the friend everyone envied, the man who had everything. Everything except something real. He swirled the champagne in his glass, letting the bubbles rise. The laughter around him was a symphony, but to Lucas, it rang hollow. His best friend had found the one, someone to love, to build a life with, and Lucas was genuinely happy for him. Yet beneath the smile, an ache gnawed at his chest. It whispered the truth he never spoke aloud, that no one had ever loved Lucas Bennet the man. They loved the billionaire, the myth, the glittering facade. Somewhere across the ballroom, Marie adjusted the strap of her dress and tried not to feel out of place. She wasn't wealthy, she wasn't wearing designer, and she certainly wasn't used to ballrooms that sparkled like movie sets. She had come as a plus one to a cousin connected to the bride's family, and though she smiled warmly when spoken to, a quiet voice inside reminded her she didn't belong in this world. She carried herself with grace, her dark skin glowing under the golden lights, her natural curls pinned up with understated elegance. Marie was used to standing out in rooms like this, but not in a way that felt celebratory. She had endured too many sideways glances, too many whispered assumptions. Tonight, she promised herself she would simply enjoy the celebration, clap when the couple kissed, and slip out unnoticed when the night grew too long. But her resolve faltered the moment her eyes drifted across the room and locked on him. For a heartbeat, their gazes tangled. He was laughing with someone, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She tilted her head, curious. People like him were supposed to glow with certainty, but she recognized something different in his expression. Something raw. Something lonely. "Marie, you okay?" her cousin whispered beside her, handing her a drink. She blinked, breaking the moment. Yeah, just taking it all in. Across the ballroom, Lucas felt it too, the strange pull of a stranger's gaze. He searched the crowd until he found her. A woman unlike anyone else in the room. Her beauty was undeniable, yes, but it was the way she carried herself, unapologetically with quiet strength, that made the air shift. She wasn't looking at him the way everyone else did. Not with awe, not with calculation. She was simply looking. Seeing. For the first time in years, Lucas felt exposed. The band shifted into a slow melody as servers glided through the room with trays of hors d'oeuvres. The bride and groom entered, greeted by applause and laughter. Lucas clapped along, his practiced composure intact, but his thoughts drifted back to her. Who was she? Why did one glance feel heavier than 1,000 words? Marie, on the other hand, shook her head at herself. The last thing she needed was to get swept up in fantasies about men like him. Billionaires didn't fall for women like her. They lived in different galaxies, and crossing paths meant nothing more than a flicker of coincidence. And yet, when the bride's bouquet brushed against Marie as it was passed down the table, she startled, fumbling to steady her glass. It was then she caught sight of Lucas again, standing only a few feet away, watching. Their eyes met a second time, and though neither spoke, something unspoken passed between them. A promise. A warning. A spark. Lucas felt his chest tighten. It was absurd. He didn't believe in sparks in love at first sight. But something in her gaze cracked the silence inside him. He looked away quickly, laughing at a guest's joke, but the warmth lingered. Marie exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "Don't be ridiculous," she murmured under her breath, sipping her drink. She would enjoy the wedding, yes. But whatever that moment was, it meant nothing. Still, deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that the night had shifted. Have you ever locked eyes with a stranger and felt something unexplainable? Tell me in the comments. Do you believe in instant sparks, or do you think love always grows slowly? The vows had been said, the rings exchanged, and the ballroom buzzed with celebration. The band played with an elegance that made the chandeliers tremble, and waiters refilled champagne flutes faster than they were emptied. Lucas lingered near the edge of the dance floor, the mask of billionaire composure fixed on his face. He congratulated guests, shook hands, and laughed in the right places, but his mind wasn't in the conversations. His gaze kept drifting unbidden to the woman in the deep emerald dress who had unsettled him with a single glance. Marie. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew he needed to. Lucas, one of his business associates, drawled, nudging him with a smirk. "You've been distracted tonight. Don't tell me the great Lucas Bennett has finally found a woman who caught his eye." Lucas chuckled lightly, deflecting as he always did. "I'm just here to celebrate my best friend's happiness." But even as he said it, his eyes betrayed him, sliding once more toward her. Across the room, Marie sat with her cousin, laughing softly at a story someone shared. Her laughter was unguarded, genuine, a sound that reached Lucas even over the music. She caught him looking again and quickly looked away, heat creeping into her cheeks. "What are you doing?" She scolded herself. He's probably the kind of man who's used to women staring. Don't be one of them. The bride's father tapped the microphone, calling everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's get this dance floor moving. All couples, please join the bride and groom." Music swelled, couples poured onto the dance floor, and the celebration bloomed into color and movement. Marie resisted the urge to stand. Dancing in a crowd of strangers wasn't her comfort zone, especially under the glittering eyes of wealth. She sat quietly, sipping her champagne, pretending she didn't notice Lucas moving closer. Then, like fate had a mischievous hand, it happened. A tipsy guest stumbled, colliding into Marie's chair. Her glass slipped, tilting dangerously, but before it could spill across her dress, a steady hand caught it. His hand. "Lucas." "Careful," he said, his voice low but smooth, steadying the glass in her grasp. For the first time, their eyes locked at arm's length. Up close, she noticed the faint weariness in his gaze, the humanity beneath the polish. "Thank you," she managed, her voice soft, her pulse racing. "Least I could do," he said, smiling. Not the rehearsed smile he used for cameras, but something smaller, warmer. "I'd hate to see the night ruined over champagne." Marie gave a polite laugh, trying to ease the tension sparking in the air. "I think I'd survive. It's not the end of the world." "Maybe not," Lucas replied, tilting his head. "But sometimes the small things matter more than we admit." The weight of his words startled her. For a man she assumed lived in excess, he spoke with unexpected depth. "Do you always make philosophy out of spilled drinks?" she teased, her voice laced with caution and curiosity. He chuckled, shaking his head. "Only when I meet someone worth saving a glass for." The words landed between them, not flirtatious in tone but undeniably intimate. Marie looked away, grounding herself. She couldn't afford to read too much into this. Men like him, they played games. Still, when he extended his hand a moment later, gesturing toward the dance floor, she hesitated. "Dance with me," he said simply. Not a demand. Not a performance. Just a quiet request. Her instinct was to refuse, to shield herself, but something in his voice disarmed her. Against her better judgment, she placed her hand in his. His touch was warm, steady, sending a shiver through her that she quickly tried to suppress. They stepped onto the dance floor. The band played a slow, hauntingly beautiful melody. Lucas guided her gently, not with the practiced dominance of a man who needed control, but with a surprising softness. His hand rested lightly against her back, respectful yet sure, and Marie felt her chest tighten. "You don't seem like the kind of man who dances often," she said, keeping her tone light. "You're right," Lucas admitted. "I don't. But I didn't want to miss this chance." The honesty in his voice made her throat dry. She looked up at him, and for a moment the room melted away. The chandeliers blurred, the laughter faded, and it was just them. Two people whose worlds had collided in a way neither expected. Lucas studied her face as though committing it to memory. She wasn't adorned in the jewels or couture he usually saw at events like this. She didn't need them. Her authenticity was magnetic, pulling him closer with every passing beat. "You're different," he murmured almost to himself. Marie arched a brow, forcing herself not to melt under his gaze. "Is that your go-to line?" A small laugh escaped him. "No. I've never said that before." Something in his tone, unpolished, unpracticed, told her he meant it. She wanted to pull back to shield her heart, but when the music swelled and he spun her gently, she found herself smiling despite her resolve. It felt like floating, like being caught in a moment too fragile to last. As the song ended, their hands lingered longer than they should have. He looked down at her, and she looked away quickly, breaking the spell. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the dance." "Thank you," Lucas echoed, his voice low, as though the gratitude was deeper than the words could hold. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with the swell of applause for the newlyweds, the spell broke. Marie slipped back toward her table, her heart thundering. Lucas remained where he stood, watching her disappear into the crowd, knowing something irreversible had just shifted inside him. Do you believe one dance can change everything? Share in the comments if you've ever had a moment that felt like fate was pulling two people together. The music shifted back to something lively, laughter filled the ballroom, and the spell of the slow dance dissolved into the chaos of celebration. Yet Lucas felt as though the ground beneath him had tilted. He stood among old friends and business partners, but their voices blurred into meaningless chatter. His mind lingered on emerald green fabric, the warmth of her hand in his, the way her eyes had met his with an honesty he hadn't felt in years. And that terrified him. "Lucas!" One of the groomsmen clapped him on the back, nearly spilling his drink. "Come on, man, we've got to drag you into the next toast." Lucas forced a smile, raising his glass. He played his part perfectly, laughing at jokes, posing for pictures, even making a short, charming speech about friendship and love. Outwardly, he was flawless, the billionaire best friend, confident and polished. But inside, he was resisting the pull he felt toward Marie with every ounce of willpower he had. It was absurd. A dance, a glance, a spark. It meant nothing. That wasn't how life worked. He had built walls for a reason, and he wasn't about to tear them down because of a woman he barely knew. Yet when he risked a glance across the room, he found her again, seated quietly, sipping from her glass, her cousin chatting animatedly beside her. She wasn't looking at him, but he felt the magnetic pull all the same. He tore his eyes away, jaw tightening. "Focus, Lucas. This isn't you." Across the ballroom, Marie was having her own silent war. Her cousin leaned in, whispering, "Girl, is it just me, or has Lucas Bennett been staring at you all night?" Marie nearly choked on her drink. "Don't be ridiculous." "He hasn't." "Oh, he has," her cousin teased, eyes twinkling. "That dance. Sparks. Literal sparks." Marie shook her head, willing her pulse to slow. "He's a billionaire. Men like him don't. They don't see women like me." Her cousin frowned. "Why not?" "Because I'm not part of their world," Marie said softly. "And I don't want to be. I've seen what happens when you get too close to men like that. They leave, or worse, they never see you as enough." The words slipped out before she could stop them, heavy with memories of a past heartbreak she hadn't shared with many. She straightened her shoulders, masking the vulnerability. "Anyway, he's probably just being polite." It meant nothing. But even as she said it, her mind betrayed her, replaying the warmth of his hand, the depth in his eyes, the way he'd said, "You're different." She pushed the thought aside. "No. You can't fall for a fantasy. Not tonight." The universe, however, seemed determined to test them both. Later in the evening, as the bride and groom made their way around the room greeting guests, Lucas found himself cornered by a group of acquaintances. They teased him about his perpetual bachelor status. "Lucas, when are you going to be the one up there?" one of them asked, slapping his shoulder. He laughed it off, defaulting to the charming quip he'd used countless times. "When I find someone who loves me more than my bank account, maybe I'll consider it." The group laughed, but the words cut sharper than Lucas expected. He glanced toward Marie again and saw her smiling politely at someone across her table. His chest tightened. He turned back, masking the flicker of longing with another grin. "For now, I'll just focus on running empires." But inside, he felt the hollowness deepen. Marie, meanwhile, endured her own test. A pair of women at a nearby table whispered just loudly enough for her to hear. "Who is she?" one asked, lips curling. "No idea," the other replied. "Doesn't look like she belongs here. Probably someone's +1. Marie clenched her jaw, pretending not to hear, but the words stung. She had fought her whole life to feel like she belonged, only to be reminded, yet again, that some people would never see her as enough. When she looked up, she caught Lucas watching her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she wondered if he'd overheard, if he saw her the way they did. Heat rose in her chest, a mix of shame and anger. She turned away, focusing on her drink. Lucas's hands curled into fists at his side. He hadn't heard the words, but he recognized the shift in her body language. The way her shoulders tightened, the way her smile faltered. Something in him wanted to cross the room to defend her, to erase the shadow from her eyes. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he swallowed the urge, retreating into his carefully built walls. Don't complicate this. You don't do vulnerability, Lucas. You don't do love." And Marie, equally guarded, told herself the same. "He's not for you. Protect yourself. Don't fall for sparks." So they both resisted. Yet, even in resistance, they couldn't look away. Have you ever tried to ignore feelings you didn't want to have? Did resisting make them fade, or only make them stronger? Share your thoughts below. The wedding reception carried on in waves of music, laughter, and clinking glasses. The bride and groom glowed in the center of it all, moving from one table to the next, embracing loved ones and posing for endless photos. Lucas kept his role polished and perfect, but every few minutes his gaze betrayed him, flickering to Marie. Fate, or perhaps mischief, seemed determined to pull them closer. When the servers announced dinner, guests began shifting toward their assigned seats. Lucas approached his table, only to stop short. His name card sat directly beside hers. Marie froze at the same discovery. Emerald dress, Lucas Bennett, and the awkward realization that they'd been placed together, whether by accident or design. She whispered under her breath, "You've got to be kidding me." Lucas glanced at her, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Seems like the seating chart has a sense of humor. Marie folded her napkin in her lap, determined to keep her guard up. Or a cruel streak. The first course arrived, and silence hung between them for several minutes. Lucas tapped the edge of his fork, stealing glances at her profile. Marie, meanwhile, pretended to study the centerpiece of roses and flickering candles, her heartbeat annoyingly loud in her ears. Finally, he broke the silence. "So, are you going to tell me your name, or am I destined to keep calling you Emerald Dress in my head?" Her lips curved despite her best efforts. "Marie." "Marie," he repeated, tasting the sound of it. His voice dropped softer. "Beautiful name." She looked at him then, meeting his eyes with quiet defiance. "And you're Lucas Bennett. Everyone knows your name." He smirked lightly. "Occupational hazard." "Or lifestyle hazard," she countered, arching a brow. The honesty in her tone startled him. Most people either flattered him or tiptoed around his reputation. She, however, didn't care to play the game. "I suppose you're right," he said after a pause, surprising her. "Though I'd trade the headlines for one night of being just Lucas." Marie tilted her head. And what would just Lucas do differently? He looked down, a shadow crossing his expression. He'd probably admit he's tired of being admired for all the wrong reasons. The vulnerability in his words tugged at her, but she forced herself not to soften. She remembered too well what it felt like to open up to someone only to be dismissed. "Maybe people only admire what you show them," she said quietly, her tone edged but not unkind. Lucas blinked, caught off guard by the truth in her observation. "And what do you see, Marie?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. "A man who hides behind charm because he's afraid of being ordinary." The words landed like a punch. For a moment, Lucas forgot how to breathe. No one had ever cut through him like that. Not so quickly, not so easily. He let out a slow exhale, a faint, rueful smile curving his lips. "You might be the first person who's ever said that to me." "Am I wrong?" she asked softly. "No," he admitted. "That's the problem." Their food arrived, breaking the intensity of the moment. But as they ate, something shifted. The walls Lucas usually held so tightly began to loosen, brick by brick. Marie remained guarded, but curiosity pulled at her resolve. Midway through dinner, a commotion broke out near the head table. A spilled wine glass, a cascade of red across the bride's white gown. Gasps filled the room, servers rushed forward, and in the chaos, Marie instinctively stood, grabbing napkins and moving to help. Lucas rose with her, following her lead. "Here," Marie said quickly, dabbing at the spill with calm efficiency. "Don't rub, just blot. It'll come out easier." The bride, flustered but grateful, nodded, leaning on Marie's steady presence. Lucas knelt beside them, holding the extra cloths Marie requested, listening as she directed the effort with quiet confidence. "You've done this before," Lucas murmured when they finally stepped back. Marie gave a small laugh. "I've lived through enough clumsy family reunions. You pick up a few tricks." He studied her, admiration flickering in his eyes. Not for her beauty this time, but for the way she'd stepped in without hesitation, grounding the moment when everyone else panicked. As the bride thanked her, pulling her into a grateful hug, Lucas felt something shift again. Marie didn't need chandeliers or cameras to shine. She was light in her own right. Later, when they returned to their seats, Lucas leaned closer. "You saved the night." Marie shrugged. "It was just a dress." "No," Lucas said quietly, his voice steady. "It was more than that." She looked at him then, her defenses cracking just slightly. For a moment, she saw not the billionaire, not the icon, but the man who was watching her like she was the only real thing in the room. Her chest tightened. She couldn't afford this. She couldn't let herself believe. And yet, sitting inches away from him, his warmth seeping into her, she couldn't deny the pull. They both sat back, silent, caught in a fragile truce neither wanted to name. "Do you believe fate forces people together for a reason? Or is it all just coincidence? Share your thoughts. Was Marie's seat next to Lucas' destiny or chance?" The wedding reception stretched deeper into the night. The band shifted from lively swing numbers to softer ballads. Candles burned lower in their holders, and laughter mellowed into warm conversations. Lucas and Marie remained seated side by side, their earlier banter giving way to quieter exchanges. He noticed the way she tucked a curl behind her ear when she grew thoughtful. She noticed how he rolled his cufflinks when he grew restless. Slowly, without meaning to, they began to see past the masks. "Tell me something," Lucas said, his voice low enough to be swallowed by the music. Marie glanced at him warily. "That's a dangerous invitation." "Something real," he clarified. "Not polite small talk. Something that actually matters." She studied him for a long moment, weighing her choices. Most men she met weren't interested in her truths, only in how she fit into their version of the world. But something in his gaze urged honesty. "My father left when I was 12, she said finally, her voice steady but quiet. "My mom raised me and my little brother on her own. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, and still managed to smile at the end of the day. She taught me how to be strong, how to survive." Lucas's expression softened. "That sounds like strength most people can't imagine." Marie gave a small shrug, eyes on the flickering candle between them. "It also taught me not to depend on anyone. Because people leave. And it hurts less if you never expect them to stay." The words hung heavy in the air, and she instantly regretted her candor. She looked down, fiddling with her napkin, trying to mask the vulnerability. But Lucas didn't retreat. He leaned closer, voice gentle. "Marie, I would never walk away from something real. Not by choice." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the echo of past disappointments pulled her back. She forced a light laugh, brushing it off. "Your turn. Something real." Lucas hesitated, the charm slipping from his face. His instinct was to deflect, to keep his truths buried where no one could exploit them. But for the first time in years, he felt compelled to answer honestly. "My parents died when I was 22, he said quietly. His eyes fixed on the glass in his hand. "Plane crash. I inherited everything overnight. Money, companies, responsibility. All of it. And with it came people. People who didn't care about me, just what I could give them. I learned quickly that being needed isn't the same as being loved." Marie's breath caught. She hadn't expected such rawness. "That's why you hide," she said softly. He looked up, meeting her gaze. "That's why I hide." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but laden with understanding. Two people carrying different scars, yet recognizing the same ache in each other. Marie broke the silence first, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm sorry. For your loss." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Thank you. I don't talk about it often. People don't want to hear about pain from a man who's supposed to have everything." Her heart squeezed. She knew too well the weight of expectations, the pressure to be strong while burying the hurt. "You deserve to be more than what people expect," she said. "And you deserve someone who doesn't leave," he replied without hesitation. The intensity in his tone startled her, sending her eyes darting away. She took a sip of champagne, needing something to ground herself. "Don't fall for words," she told herself. Words can't be trusted. But she couldn't deny the way her walls trembled. Just then, a burst of laughter from the head table pulled them both back into the present. The bride and groom were making their rounds again, glowing, radiant. Lucas raised his glass toward them, smiling, though his mind lingered on Marie's words. "Funny," he murmured. "I came here tonight to celebrate love. Didn't think I'd end up questioning everything I thought I knew about it." Marie looked at him, her defenses wavering. "And what do you think now?" He held her gaze, his voice barely above the music. "I think maybe love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Maybe it's about finding the one person who sees you, really sees you, and doesn't flinch." Her heart thudded painfully. She wanted to believe him, but the ghosts of her past whispered louder. "Be careful, Lucas," she said softly, her voice trembling with both warning and longing. "Words like that, they can change everything." He smiled faintly, but his eyes burned with sincerity. Maybe that's the point. The tension between them thickened, so palpable it was almost unbearable. Neither moved, neither spoke, as if the entire room had faded away, leaving only the two of them suspended in fragile truth. And yet, in the deepest corner of her heart, Marie felt fear coil tight. Because if she let herself believe him, if she let herself fall, what would happen when the world reminded her that she wasn't part of his? Do you think people's past wounds make them stronger in love, or do they hold them back from trusting again? Drop your thoughts below. The wedding reception carried on, but Lucas and Marie lingered at their table, caught in a pocket of stillness as the world danced around them. The heavy truths of their pasts had been spoken, yet instead of building walls, the honesty had cracked them open. For the first time, they weren't billionaire and guest, myth and outsider. They were just Lucas and Marie. When the band shifted to an upbeat song, Marie laughed as her cousin pulled her onto the dance floor. She moved with ease, her laughter ringing out like a melody. Lucas, seated alone, found himself watching without shame this time. She wasn't performing, she was living. And it was intoxicating. Minutes later, she slipped back into her seat, cheeks flushed, curls loosening from their pins. Lucas smirked, sliding her a fresh glass of champagne. "You look like you just ran a marathon." "More fun than a marathon," she said between breaths. "Less pain, too." He chuckled, and for the first time, his laugh wasn't polished, it was real. Marie noticed the difference, and it tugged something deep inside her. "You should try it," she teased. "Dancing without the weight of the world on your shoulders." He leaned back, studying her with amused eyes. "And look ridiculous in front of 300 people? I don't think so." She tilted her head. "I think you're more afraid of looking human than ridiculous." Her words caught him off guard, but instead of deflecting, he laughed again. Softer this time, almost boyish. "You might be right." A silence settled, but it was no longer heavy. It was warm, comfortable. Lucas found himself leaning closer, elbows resting on the table. "You know, Marie, I don't usually do this." "Do what?" she asked, raising a brow. "Talk like this. Share things I don't even admit to myself. Laugh like this." Marie's chest tightened. She wanted to believe he was being sincere, but a part of her still braced for disappointment. Still, when his gaze softened, she allowed herself to smile. "Maybe you just needed the right company." The words hung between them, gentle but weighted. Lucas's throat tightened. No business deal, no public accolade had ever made him feel this raw, this seen. "Come with me," he said suddenly, standing. Marie blinked. "Excuse me." He offered his hand. "Just for a walk. Away from all this." Something in his tone disarmed her hesitation. Against her better judgment, Lucas released a slow breath, as if shedding the weight of the ballroom. "Much better," he murmured. Marie wrapped her arms around herself, partly from the chill, partly from nerves. "So, Mr. Bennett, is this the part where you tell me all your secrets?" He smirked faintly. "Only if you promise not to run." She gave a soft laugh, her shoulders relaxing. "Try me." They strolled down the path, their steps slow, unhurried. Lucas found himself speaking truths he rarely voiced. How success had cost him peace, how every room felt like a stage, how silence was his only sanctuary. Marie listened quietly, her eyes thoughtful. When he faltered, she offered small nods, the kind that told him she understood more than words could say. Then she surprised him. "I used to dream about big weddings like this," she admitted, gesturing back toward the ballroom. "But then life taught me different lessons. I realized the size of the room doesn't matter. It's who's holding your hand when the music stops." Lucas stopped walking, her words settling deep. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift inside him. "Marie," he said softly, "I don't know what this is, but it feels like I've been waiting for it my whole life." Her breath caught, her defenses trembling. She wanted to retreat, to remind herself that men like him didn't stay. But the way he was looking at her, like she was the first real thing he'd ever seen, made retreat impossible. She tried for levity, her voice shaking slightly. "Careful, Lucas. You're starting to sound like a man who believes in love." He smiled, small and vulnerable. "Maybe I am. For the first time." The night wrapped around them, quiet and tender. Lucas reached for her hand, hesitating just long enough for her to choose. When she didn't pull away, their fingers intertwined. For a few fragile minutes, the world was simple. No wealth, no scars, no judgment. Just two people, hand in hand, breathing the same air. Marie closed her eyes briefly, letting herself feel it. The peace, the safety, the possibility. She knew it wouldn't last forever, but for tonight, she let herself believe. Have you ever felt safe with someone in a way you couldn't explain? Do you believe small moments can feel like healing? Share your experience below. The night air was cool, the garden still alive with soft lights and whispers of music drifting from the ballroom. Lucas and Marie lingered in that fragile bubble, fingers intertwined, hearts beating in rhythm. Her chest tightened. She stayed frozen, torn between flinging open the door and pretending she wasn't there. "Please," Lucas said, his tone raw, stripped of all polish. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need to explain." Tears pricked her eyes, but she remained still. Could she really let him back in after the way he'd cut her? "Marie," he continued, his voice breaking slightly, "I was wrong. About everything. About what I said. You're not a mistake. You're the first thing in a long time that's ever felt real to me. And I was terrified." Her breath hitched. He pressed his forehead against the door, his voice barely above a whisper now. I don't want to hide anymore. Not from you. If you tell me to go, I'll go. But if there's even a part of you that feels what I feel, open the door. The silence that followed stretched long, filled with Marie's racing heart and trembling hands. This was her choice now, to protect herself and keep the door shut, or to risk the very pain she'd spent years guarding against. Her mother's words echoed faintly from childhood. Strength isn't just surviving, Marie. It's choosing to love even when you're afraid. Her hand moved before her mind caught up. She turned the handle. The door opened, revealing Lucas standing there, his eyes tired, vulnerable, desperate. No suit of armor. No billionaire mask. Just a man, waiting for her answer. Marie's breath shuddered out of her. And though fear still lingered, so did hope. Would you have opened the door for Lucas? Or would you have protected your heart and kept it closed? Share what choice you would make. The door creaked open, and for a suspended moment, Lucas and Marie simply stood there, staring at each other. The silence was charged. Fear, longing, regret, and the fragile thread of hope all tangled in the air. Lucas's voice was the first to break through, hushed and unsteady. Thank you for opening the door. Marie crossed her arms, more to steady herself than out of defiance. You hurt me, Lucas. I know, he said quickly, his eyes burning with sincerity. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life if you let me. I said what I did because I was scared. I've spent years being the man everyone expects. The man with the power, the money, the mask. But with you, he paused, searching for the right words. With you, I felt real. And that terrified me, because I didn't want to lose it before it even began. Marie's chest ached at the vulnerability in his voice. Part of her wanted to cling to her anger, to protect herself. But the truth was, she saw the man in front of her. Not the billionaire. Not the myth. Just Lucas. Flawed, afraid, and reaching for her. She swallowed hard. I've spent my whole life learning not to depend on anyone. People always leave. And I can't. Her voice cracked, but she forced it steady. I can't survive being someone's accessory, Lucas. He stepped closer, careful as if she might vanish. You're not an accessory. You're not a mistake. You're the only thing that's ever made sense to me. I don't want the cameras, or the headlines, or the admiration of strangers. I want you. Her breath hitched. She wanted to believe him, desperately. But belief required risk. Lucas took a deep breath, his pride falling away completely. If it takes a lifetime, I'll prove it. I'll prove to you that I won't leave. That I can be the man who stays. Tears welled in Marie's eyes. His words, so raw and unpolished, slipped past her walls. For years she had built her strength on surviving alone. But in this moment she realized strength could also mean daring to choose love, even when it was terrifying. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling. Don't make promises you can't keep. He squeezed her hand gently. This one I intend to keep. Something in her broke open then, not in pain but in release. The tears spilled freely, and Lucas pulled her into his arms. For the first time all night, she didn't resist. She melted against him, feeling the steady thud of his heartbeat beneath her cheek, the warmth of his embrace wrapping around her like safety she hadn't known in years. They stood there for what felt like forever. Two souls who had collided by chance but chosen by choice. When she finally pulled back, her eyes shimmered, but her smile was real. You know this won't be easy, right? Your world and mine. They don't exactly fit. He brushed a thumb across her cheek, tender. Then we'll build one of our own, piece by piece. Her laugh was soft, disbelieving but filled with hope. You make it sound simple. He grinned faintly. For the first time in my life, it is. The next morning, whispers swirled among the few lingering wedding guests who had seen Lucas and Marie leave together. But for once, Lucas didn't care about appearances. He held her hand openly at breakfast, unbothered by curious glances. When his best friend teased him, "So, Lucas, who's the mystery woman stealing your attention?" Lucas only smiled and looked at Marie with a softness no one had ever seen from him. Thank you so much for watching my story. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of my next stories. More amazing content is coming your way.